Today we're going to be dividing fractions. Our goal is to find quotients of expressions involving two fractions. In previous lessons, we've looked at finding the quotients of fractions by using models. Well, today we're going to do another method of solving the division of fractions. So to review our vocabulary, the word reciprocal is when two numbers are reciprocals if their product is 1. In other words, if you multiply them together, you're going to get a 1. So the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1, which of course would give us 2/2 or 1 whole. So find the reciprocals of the following numbers. Go ahead and take a minute to pause this video and find the reciprocals on your own. Okay, let's check. So the reciprocal of 2/3 would be 3/2. There, clean it up. And the reciprocal of 1/7 would be, of course, its flip is what it's nicknamed, 7/1. And the reciprocal of 5/6 is 6/5. And you can check by saying, well, when I multiply these together, do I get 1 whole? And you do for all of these. So those are our reciprocals. Let's get started. So to divide a fraction by another fraction, a great trick is to multiply by its reciprocal. So for any numbers a, b, c, and d, if you have the quantity a divided by b, or a over b, divided by c over d, that's equal to a over b times the reciprocal, which would be d over c. Go ahead and take a minute to make sure you have this in your notes. So let's look at our first example. Find the quotient. So drawing a model to find out how many of one fraction fits into another fraction helps you visualize the quotient, which is what we've done in the previous tutorials. However, it becomes more difficult when fractions do not divide evenly into each other. So for example, 1/2 divided by 3/8. If we were to start with 1/2, and then we were to divide that into 8s, so now we have 8 pieces, and then I would look at 3/8, so I have 3/8 here, dividing 3/8, I can see that it doesn't go in evenly. So even though the models help you visualize fractions, you do need to know how to multiply by the reciprocal. So let's go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal. So when we have 1/2 divided by 3/8, we need to follow our steps carefully. Step 1, of course, is to rewrite the problem, which is written for you here. Step 2, find the reciprocal of the divisor. Well, we have the dividend here and the divisor here, and you have to always make sure that you're multiplying by the reciprocal of the divisor. So make a little note that step 2 is also the second number in your division problem. A common mistake is students will flip the first one. Make sure you avoid that because you will get the wrong answer. So find the reciprocal. So the reciprocal, of course, is 8/3. So then you multiply the dividend, which is 1/2, times the reciprocal, which is 8/3. So then you follow the same steps when multiplying fractions. So if you want, you can just multiply 1 times 8 and 2 times 3, or you can cross cancel. 2 and 8, both you can factor out a 2, which would give you 4/3, or 1 whole, because there's one group of 3, and a remainder of 1/3. You can also do that by dividing 4 by 3. If you can't see that right away, you would get, of course, a remainder of 1, and in fractions, it's 1 over the divisor, which is 3. So that's how you find the quotient of fractions. Let's look at a few more examples. But first I wanted to point out that 8/6, of course, you would reduce that. And by using the other method, which if you need help with these methods, go back to the tutorial on multiplying fractions where I discuss some shortcuts in order to cross-cancel as you're multiplying. That way you can avoid reducing at the end. Let's look at another example with mixed numbers. So we have 1 1/4 divided by 2 2/9. So in this problem, we of course need to change the mixed numbers into improper fractions first. So remember, we multiply, then add in a counterclockwise direction. So we have 4 times 1, which is 4, plus 1, which is 5. So we have 5/4 divided by 20/9, because 9 times 2 is 18, plus 2 is 20. So then I have to find the reciprocal of the divisor. Divisor is always the second one. The reciprocal of 20/9 is 9/20. Make sure you are turning these into improper fractions before you find the reciprocal. So now we have problems that we can solve a little bit easier. So we have 5/4 times 9/20. And I'm going to model factoring. So we have 5 and 20 have a common factor of 5. And remember, you have to find a factor between the numerator and the denominator. So that gives us a factor out of 5. Of each of these numbers, I have 1 and 4. And between 4 and 9, I have no common factors. So those stay the same. So now I can just multiply 1 times 9, which is 9, and 4 times 4, which is 16. If I didn't do this, I would of course have 45 over 80, which I would then factor out of 5 or reduce it anyway. So this way you don't have to reduce at the end. So that gives me 9/16. Great job dividing those mixed numbers. Let's look at another example. So in this example, we have 2 1/6 divided by 7. Again, my first step, of course, is to rewrite the problem, which is already completed. Then I need to find the reciprocal of the divisor. But before that, I need all fractions. So again, I have 6 times 2, which is 12, plus 1, which will give me 13/6, divided by 7/1. So remember, a whole number, I can just put it over 1 in order to make it an improper fraction. I cleaned up that one. And now, of course, I need the divisor, which is always the second number's reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 7 is 1/7. So now I have 13/6 times 1/7. So now I need to look and see if I can cross-cancel anything. I cannot factor out anything between the numerators and the denominators, so I'm just going to multiply as usual. Multiply the tops and multiply the bottoms. 13 times 1 is 13. 6 times 7 is 42. So I have 13/42 when I find the quotient of 2 1/6 divided by 7. So don't let whole numbers confuse you, because some students find that a little bit more challenging, but I've found that students who find it more challenging are kind of overthinking it. So the reciprocal of 7 is 1/7. Don't forget to find the reciprocal. So if you think you might struggle with that, make a little note to yourself in your notes so that you really are thinking more critically about it. And then, of course, you can check. You can check these by thinking of compatible numbers, or you can check with a model as well, as we've done in previous lessons. Of course, like I've said, some models don't always divide evenly, so you have to be careful when checking with models. And sometimes compatible numbers are a better solution. Now I want you to take a minute to find the quotient of the following 4 problems. Make sure you're writing them down and working through them carefully. Remember to change all mixed numbers to improper fractions. And remember, of course, multiply by the reciprocal. Good luck. Now I want you to take a minute to look over your notes. Make sure you have all the information that you need. Of course, the guided practice problems will probably be on a separate page. So make sure you have all the information. Go ahead and pause, check your notes, and if you're missing anything, make sure you include the steps for completing a division of fractions problem. So another great job today. Make sure that you are writing down all the steps and you're carefully completing the problems. Another thing I want to remember to remind you about is, of course, to, as always, make sure that you are multiplying by the reciprocal of the divisor, which is, of course, the second fraction that you see in a problem. And of course, you can go back to other videos on multiplying fractions and mixed numbers, as well as multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers with models as well, to help you if you have any other questions. So another great job today.